Okay, so our next speaker comes from the Netherlands. He will be on stage quite a while, actually. But we decided to break his speech so that you can all have some lunch, because we don't want you to be hungry. So we want you to enjoy. So we're moving up to a discussion called What's Been and What Is Coming, which is, as we mentioned earlier, relevant to our theme. Maybe I'm not sitting properly here, so come next to you, Linus, sorry. What has been and what is coming, which will be split into two parts. The name of our speaker is Joost Gerritsen. I think I pronounced it correctly. Thank you. Good. Joost is a Dutch lawyer, and Legal Beetle is his baby, basically. He's CEO of DG Beetle, and it's a platform that helps privacy professionals stay up to date with the most important EU legal developments. That it's really a hard task. Okay. Come up on stage and join us. We're really looking forward to hear you.
Test, test, test. Let me organize for a second. Hold on. Thank you, Elizabeth and Linus. Yeah, everything fine? For the kind introduction. Thank you all for being part of the audience. It is called Nordic Privacy Arena, but it could be perhaps better be called like International Privacy Arena, right? Because, thank you very much. Yes, there are a lot of people from the Nordics, but just out of curiosity, who is not from Sweden? You're right. And who is not from a Scandinavian country? Okay. We will meet during the lunch then, all the non-Scandinavian, no, of course. The idea is, of course, to meet each other and to start conversation. So I'm really glad to be a small part of that. My name is Joost Gerritsen, indeed. I'm the CEO of DG Beetle, platform that tries to combat the fear of missing out, the avalanche of case law, supervisory authority documents, you name it. And it is hard, but it can be done. And based on what we gathered on the platform, I will use that information right now to inform you about global and enforcement trends, as well as important Court of Justice of the EU judgments. Then we have a lunch break. And if you're not sick of me, then you can stay or come back for part 2, because before the lunch, I will focus on what has been, so what has happened in the past year. After lunch, I will focus on what will come to us, what will be, what's coming. Especially which judgments can you expect in the coming months. So hopefully you'll come back for part 2. And as a bonus, if you're still not sick of me, we will talk about the EU Digital Rulebook. But that's another session after part 2. Anyways, yes, you can find all this online. And as much as I do love talking about myself, we have to combat my worst enemy, which is time. I don't have a lot of it. Hold on, I will put on the timer, so I won't keep you from lunch that much. 25 minutes has started right now. And let me see. In those 25 minutes, like I said, I'm going to talk about, start with the global and enforcement trends. This is just to give you an idea of what's happening. When I assembled all these trends, I think they have in common. They are the effect or the consequence of a trend that's going on for years and years now, called globalization, right? The world is getting smaller. What does it mean? Well, lots of things, but a few things are international trade and international threats are coming at our doorstep. And that's what's happening. That's also what you see if you look at the supervisory authorities. They think a lot about these international data transfers, of course, in light of the AI developments. Generative AI is a big thing. DeepSeek, supposedly better large language model than what's been being offered from the US or Europe. I don't think that's true anymore because I don't hear anybody speaking about it. DeepSeek was a large language model, or still is, offered from China. So in this case, the Dutch DPA warns against the use of this chatbot because it says, well, if you use it, you risk up ending sending personal data from Europe to China. And as we know, China is not an adequate country, as they say. Again, in light of these international data transfers, TikTok already been fined by the Irish Data Protection Agency, the DPC, back in April. I think it was a record fine, right? 530 million euros, quite a lot, mainly because of two reasons. TikTok, according to the regulator, didn't inform its users about the fact that data could end up in China, because TikTok is a Chinese company. Another aspect I thought it was quite interesting that, yes, TikTok used the standard contract clauses, you know, this legal basis used to, how to say, make it legally possible to send data from Europe to China. However, they didn't put enough safeguards in place to actually make those standard contract clauses work in practice. So I thought it was quite interesting. During that investigation, and that is what the newspaper article is about, the DPC discovered not only that data are transferred to China, but also were stored there. And they were not amused about it because TikTok denied that they stored any European data on servers in China. So now there will be a follow-up investigation. And that's what this news article is about from July of this year. And again, talking about international data transfers, Microsoft 365 being used by the European Commission. I think not surprisingly, if you ask me personally, I think Microsoft makes great products. I'm not sponsoring them or whatever, but I really like using them. But of course, we have to think about the fact that, yeah, data can be sent to the US. Again, unlike China, US is an adequate country in that sense that, yeah, we have this data privacy framework that legally allows these data transfers. However, you still have to ensure that if you transfer those data to the US, the data are protected correctly. In this case, and I thought what was interesting about this is that the EDPS, so the European Data Protection Supervisor, the organization that supervises instances, EU instances like the Commission, eventually okayed their use of Microsoft 365. And I think what was interesting mostly is that one of the safeguards the European Commission enacted were contractual safeguards. And this, the main contractual safeguard is that now really, I assume it wasn't before, but now really Microsoft has to listen to the Commission if the Commission gives them certain instruction on how to use data. And not only Microsoft, but also Microsoft's sub-processors. Well, whether you agree or not, if this indeed is an effective measure, I'll leave that up to you, but it just shows you how important contracts are still in the world of data protection. I have to speed it up again because of my enemy time. Data protection impact assessments in the Netherlands. We have a really, I think, a good company called Privacy Company, consultancy company. They do a lot of things, but they, one of the things they do is performing data protection impact assessments for, in this case, the Dutch government. This is a collective from the education sector, but they also perform those data protection impact assessments for the Dutch government. Why is this a good thing? Well, they use those impact assessments, let's say, as a bargaining conversation, in this case with Microsoft, because they highlight risks and tell, in this case, Microsoft, hey, if you want to deal with us, if you want us to buy your products, in this case, Copilot, like a popular generative AI tool, you have to mitigate the risks. Otherwise, we cannot greenlit this data protection impact assessment. So that's a really handy tool to enforce in a polite business manner data protection. I think this is a good example, and you can learn a lot yourself if your organization wants to use Copilot. What are the risks? Just download this document, and it will save you a lot of time. I'm sorry, that was back in September, quite recent. Also, still in September this month, yeah, again, international transfers, international business. So you have this Dutch company called Ziffer. Not sure if it's known here, but as a lawyer, we were obliged to use Ziffer because it offers secure email communications, in this case between the lawyer and the courts. But they did more than that. The general gist of it is that they offer secure communications. However, at some point, an American company comes knocking at their door and says, I want to buy you, Ziffer, Dutch company. Of course, they say yes, because they get a lot of money. It's no problem. But then you have to reassess the whole situation, because now not only the Dutch company offering secure communications between lawyers and courts and whatever is now in American hands, but the people who work in the company who bought Ziffer are actually ex-spies from foreign countries. So quite scary. And I can imagine you have to evaluate your stance regarding Ziffer. This is, I would say a tweet. We don't say tweets anymore. This is a post from Truth Social. I hope nobody is on that platform. From the President of the United States. I say this with all the respect possible. Long story short, he and his friends don't like the digital regulations in Europe. I would say, too bad. This is our home, our rules. Deal with it. Of course, in reality, it's more complicated. And I will talk about it even more after the break. Data is very interesting. This is nothing new to you. Right now, all these big platforms, but also smaller ones, look at their data and see, hey, we have a potential gold mine. We can use it for our AI training. I think LinkedIn is one of the latest, I would say, to that game. They want to train their data on everything you put on LinkedIn, your public profile, not your one-on-one communications via the messaging system, but your profile and your public posts. And they want to use that data for training their own AI models. I think, personally, I don't have a real problem with that, given the business nature and especially the open and transparent nature of LinkedIn. But I do have a problem with the fact that they want to train their data based on an opt-out mechanism, which could be, but they want to use that opt-out mechanism for you, to train the data dating back all the way from 2003. And I think back in 2003, or maybe 2000 till 2020 or whatever, nobody even heard about AI training or training AI models or whatever. So I think it's a bit unfair to train data based on opt-out for such a long period of time, at least the data encompassing such a period of time, simply because back in the days, you would not expect that in the future the company will train your data. But that's just a personal opinion. In Germany, we have more or less the same discussions. Here it is Meta that wants to train data, could include children's data, sensitive data. Speaking about children, French reports, we are getting smarter and smarter in understanding tools like TikTok, and especially how not only manipulative they can be, but also how engaging and getting you hooked. They want to addict you to the apps. And this is a recent report written for the French government that highlights those notions, and also the psychological effects on minors using TikToks. And I think it's really worthwhile reading. These are not just tools; they have powers behind them, and they want to, reach their own goals that are not really aligned with the well-being of your children. Italy, who is from Italy? Are people from Italy? No? Well, I just want to commend the Italians for being the first with the AI Act law. Of course, we have the AI Act. It is a regulation, but that doesn't mean as a country you should only look at the regulation. You can also enact national laws yourself that complement the AI Act. That's what Italy did, and I think from the top of my head, on the 10th of October, the law will be will commence, will apply. And let me check what they want to do with it. Yeah, it regulates AI in several sectors, among others, healthcare, labor, and government. Also regulated professions like lawyers, and I thought it was a fun provision right there. It's something, I hope my Italian is not that great, but the provision said something like, if you are a lawyer, an AI tool can never replace your intellectual contribution, for example, in advising a client. It should always be used as a tool. I thought it was a really fun notion, and also funny that it ends up in a law. The law also supports innovation and organized supervision. Speaking of supervision of the AI Act, we all know the data protection agencies in Europe. I learned this morning Germany has 18 of them, but there will be more and more and more. Why? Because the AI Act says that you have to appoint fundamental rights authorities and also market surveillance authorities. And if you add all those up, in Ireland, it led to 15 competent authorities under the AI Act. That's just one country. In total, we mapped more than 200 potential authorities in Europe. So 18 is just a small number, and I'm still getting my head around it. How will we deal with all these new authorities, new or existing, supervising the AI Act? So that's a trend we will see in the coming months. Another trend, of course, is the ever-growing body of case law, which I will highlight in a few seconds. Here I try to visualize all these different cases from beginning of 2000s until now. I think there are more than 300 cases. Sorry, when I say cases, I mean the Court of Justice of the EU. It's not that national courts are not important, but because the Court of Justice of the EU is like the highest authority, legal authority, that can interpret, let's say, provisions of the GDPR. So that for me, as a practitioner, that's really relevant. And these are more than 300 of those CJEU cases. I try to visualize it as well in this diagram. I think by the end of 2025, we will end up with a total of around 30 relevant data protection or privacy rights cases. So that's quite a lot if you look at the history. So let's dive into the cases. I prepared a few. Let's start with this one, the European Data Protection Supervisor versus the Single Resolution Board. This was a case done before the General Court, which is a part of the Court of Justice of the EU. What happened in a nutshell? In Spain, a few years ago, or quite some years ago, the Banco Popular went bankrupt, defunct. That means that you have a lot of angry shareholders and creditors who want their money back or think they are entitled to money from the bank, like people with names as Alice, Bob, or Charlie. This was just an example. And those people, they could knock at the door of the Single Resolution Board, which is an EU institution dealing with this Banco Popular bankruptcy. And the idea is that you can you are offered a sum of money, but you can contest that offering. You can say, well, I've been offered so many thousand euros, but because I'm a shareholder or I have a certain position as a creditor, I want more. That's basically what the people could ask for. And if you think you were entitled to more money, you should have filled in a form just with questions about why you should be able to receive much more money, etc., etc. And those forms, you didn't fill in your name. Well, you did fill in your name, but the SRB, so the instance dealing with all these forms, send those forms to Deloitte and asked Deloitte, hey, can you analyze all these forms? I think it was a few thousands. Analyze these forms and categorize them, because some of the reasons why people think they are entitled to more money will be more or less the same. So can we group those reasons? Can we categorize these forms? So for us, it will be easier to respond to those forms, respond to people like Alice, Bob, and Charlie. SRB, the Single Resolution Board, didn't send those forms with the names, Alice, Bob, and Charlie, but instead of the names, they used an alphanumeric code, and I tried to imitate one, like you see on the screen. But so if you worked at Deloitte, you would not be able to identify who is who, whether or not Charlie or Bob or Alice filled in the form. You wouldn't know, only if people said something really personal in the open fields, but that's not sure whether or not that happened. Anyways, long story short, I think a few of those people, yeah, they were angry about the fact that Deloitte was not named in the privacy statement as a recipient of the data. And I don't know why, but they made a whole deal about it. I think they were just really angry and, how to say, wanted to have a fight, in this case with the EDPS, or sorry, the Single Resolution Board, stating that, hey, you should have named Deloitte as a recipient of personal data. Anyways, case raised a lot of questions. I think as a privacy practitioner, for you, most relevant is that the court applied cases like Breyer, like Novak, also the Olaf versus Commission, the Olaf case, General Court case, all these cases about the definition of personal data. And it's quite important, right? Because yeah, if you don't know what personal data are, you don't know whether or not the GDPR applies. In this case, they didn't apply the GDPR, but the EU equivalent called the EU DPR, but that doesn't matter really. Anyways, here we have privacy superstar, Judge Rapporteur Thomas von Danwitz from Germany. I say superstar because he dealt with a lot of big privacy cases. When he says something, I listen very closely because he's really knowledgeable about this field of law. He says that pseudonymized data, so you could regard those forms with the alphanumeric code as a pseudonymized form of data, must not be regarded as constituting in all cases and for every person personal data. It sounds really logical, but a lot of supervisory authorities in the EU, they more or less said until in the recent past that, yeah, pseudonymized data should be regarded as personal data. So this is already a big deal. And he adds something to it. He says, well, regarding Deloitte, so that's the party to which the SRB transmitted the pseudonymized comments, certain technical and organizational means may have the effect that for them, for Deloitte, those comments aren't personal in nature. And this is, of course, a really big deal, because that could mean that if you pseudonymized correctly in a certain manner, that it will mean that for the recipient, to that party, those data are not personal data. And thus, from that perspective, in that scenario, the GDPR does not apply, or the EU DPR. Well, this can lead to all kinds of discussions. What are the consequences of this? I will invite you to talk with me, talk with your fellow colleagues, what the consequences are of this case. But it's food for thought. Another key case. Only 5 minutes left. Okay, shall we skip lunch and just... No, we have the La Tombe case. I talked with two very knowledgeable people about this case, Gloria González Fuster from University of Brussels and Pablo Kamczak. They read the verdict of this case in a few hours' time, and these were their main takeaways back then. Maybe they changed their opinion, but just as an aside, what is this case about? You have this politician, Philippe Latombe, and he contested the EU-US data privacy framework, saying it infringes EU law and that the decision enabling that framework should be annulled, should be deleted, so to speak. kind of strange, right, that he just came knocking on the door of the General Court asking this, because we know in similar cases enacted by Max Schrems, there was a whole different situation that his data was sent over to the US and there was a decision by the regulator and he contested the decision. Anyways, we still don't know whether or not Mr. Latombe has legal standing to ask the court something like this, because the court just glanced over it and dove into the heart of the case directly. So that's a bit weird. Here are their reactions. I think the words speak for themselves. You can watch my interview with them online. Here I've put a picture of the LinkedIn stream. You can still watch the recording. So I would invite you to watch the recording, but I would summarize their criticism, so to speak, as in that, yeah, the verdict in the Latombe case is quite sloppy. That's my words and not theirs. And the chances are high that in an appeal, the court might rule differently. So long story short, the EU-US data privacy framework, it is safe. You can use it in practice for now, but no guarantees the future will lead to a similar conclusion. 2 minutes left. I'll try to talk very fast. No, my timer says 2 minutes. Sorry. No, what I wanted to say is, I think it's because it's an important message that we. It's easy to talk about data protection and to talk about data, right? Logically, but, and this is of course an open door, as we say in the Netherlands, data are about people. In this case, minorities. And the court, I think they published quite some brave judgments, show that the GDPR, but also the Charter of Fundamental Rights, is really about protecting people. In this case, people from the LGBTQ community. 3 cases, quite recently, 2 from 2025, 1 from 2024. And long story short is that if you work for a government or a company, and someone says, a data subject says to you, well, hey, you registered my information, you registered it as, let's say, female, but after a sex reassignment surgery, now I am a male, you should rectify the data. You can have like this laughable discussion about, oh, well, what a nonsense or whatever. Forget about it. GDPR says you have to rectify those data, you have to listen to the data subject. So that's quite interesting. That's the case of Delditz. Moose from France. Maybe you heard about this case that if you wanted to purchase a train ticket, you had to check whether or not you are a Mr., a Mrs., one of the two. But there are also people who don't feel comfortable with either direction, Mr. or Mrs. So there was this association called Moose, and they said, well, please add a third option, like other, or in this case, don't offer the options at all. And indeed, the court agreed that it's not necessary to ask that question when people have to purchase their train ticket. So that's also, I think, for me, it's quite surprising that the GDPR can be used quite effectively to protect minority rights. These were the bonus cases. Well, we'll never know what these were about. Click, 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 click. Because it's lunchtime. Thank you very much.
Okay, welcome back from lunch. Hope it was tasty for everyone. We're about to start up again. Continue with Joost Gerritsen. It's like he never left. We have a lot of questions coming in, but keep them coming, and we'll have a while for questions towards the end.
At the end, yeah, exactly, because Joost he will continue his previous session, and then he has a short one about the EU Digital Rulebook. But as Joost has said multiple times, like time is his enemy. So I would like to invite him back on stage to continue and wrap up everything so that we don't waste your time unnecessarily, so you can make the most out of it.
Welcome.
Welcome back on stage.
Yeah. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed a wonderful lunch. I know I did. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome to the second part of my first session. Before the lunch, we talked about what has been, so things in the past. Now we're talking about what lies ahead in the future, what's coming. Let me see. Here's the remote. And it's all still part of a legal update focused on case law. I will first give you some general statistics about how many cases are pending before the Court of Justice of the EU. Then, of course, I will dive into the Advocate General opinions, which are already on the agenda, as well as expected judgments. I put an asterisk behind it, meaning that I predict that these cases will be ruled on this year, but I don't know 100% for sure, but they will become relevant in the near future. That's what I can guarantee you. And after that, like I said, there's a bonus session of 15 minutes about the digital rulebook. I wanted to ask you, which is the country with the most questions asked to the Court of Justice of the EU? Well, I already gave you the answer. It's Germany. Runner-up is Austria. So what does this mean, actually, this graph? You have different types of legal proceedings before the Court of Justice of the EU, one of which is called so-called preliminary questions. What does it mean? That if you are a national judge and you are applying EU law, and as we know, the GDPR, for instance, is an EU law, and you have doubts how to apply that EU law, how to interpret it, you are obliged to ask the Court of Justice of the EU a question about it. It can be one question, can also be 10 or even more questions. These are the countries that, of the current pending cases, ask the most questions. Germany first, Austria second. Where is Mr. Schrems? Because he is the person responsible for most of the Austrian questions. But nowadays we also have other initiators from Austria as well. So I think that's really cool. Austria is really a data protection-minded country. Bulgaria, runner-up, they ask a lot of questions regarding law enforcement directive. So if you have to deal with personal data in a law enforcement setting, for example, you work for or with the police, that's relevant to you. Italy, Czech Republic, Netherlands, etc. What strikes me the most is that there are a few really big countries, like Poland, and they are absent. They ask rarely a question about EU law to the court, which is to me a bit strange given the amount of citizens. But oh well. Maybe they get inspired. People from Poland watch this via the live stream and think, hey, I should ask a question to the court as well. What's interesting to me is that, how long do we have the GDPR? At least since 2016. Of course, it's the successor to the Data Protection Directive before that. So data protection in its current form, it is already there for quite some years, right? And still we are asking questions about basic notions. Here I depicted the article numbers of the GDPR. The bigger the sphere, the more questions are raised about that article number. Article 5 is very big, 6 is very big, so those are about the GDPR's principles and the legal grounds. And I think that's really interesting because those notions already existed in the Data Protection Directive, and still we are not 100% sure how to apply those provisions. So don't feel stupid if you apply the GDPR yourself, that you think, how does it work? I'm not really sure. Well, a lot of other smart people aren't sure either, and that's perfectly fine. Another sphere that's quite big is Article 82, and that's about the right to compensation in relation to GDPR infringements. If the GDPR is infringed, a lot of people want to get compensated, damage compensation. Of course, and that is new under the GDPR. Still, we're looking from a bit of a general perspective. This is how the court looks like from the inside. This was a hearing of the Grand Chamber. You can also see it. A lot of judges are involved in that situation. And it was about the case, let me see. Against Hungary. It's quite a bit sad that Hungary is like on a slippery slope. Yeah, they are still part of the EU, but they are doing things not in line with the EU values. That was also the case in this matter. Hungary has, I have to look it up, a so-called Sovereignty Protection Office. Sounds really vague, and that was also one of the criticisms of the European Commission. Long story short, that office targets and investigates anyone expressing opinions that deems a threat to Hungarian sovereignty. Nobody knows what it is. In practice, it has been used to silence NGOs and critical people. And in Hungary, they say, yeah, this is perfectly fine, because we do this based on the legal grounds, Article 6.1.e. This is just a public task which the office executes. And this is, of course, interesting. European Commission says, well, hey, the public task mentioned in the GDPR is not a blank check. You still have to adhere to European values. And that is, I think, really also a notion to maintain that GDPR can be really practical, whether or not you use Microsoft Office or Copilot or whatever, but some cases are really diving into fundamental rights and diving into the question, what do we think is important in Europe? So this is one case currently pending, and if a case is being dealt with by the Grand Chamber of the Court of Justice, you can watch the hearing online on the website of the court. The idea now is that I'm not going to discuss all pending cases, because I want to try if we can leave some time open for questions, either from the audience or asked online. So for now, I will just address one case which was recently published. I made this presentation in advance, so it says NADA, Austria and others, that case as a scheduled opinion of the Advocate General, but that opinion is already published because the 25th of September was last week. Really interesting case. Are people here active in the field, maybe not personally, but professionally, in the field of sports? Do you advise sports-related clients, football associations, tennis sports? No? Do people play any sports? Are you guys, Hopefully. Well, then maybe on a personal level this will resonate with you. Because what happens in Austria, there's a practice that if you use doping as an athlete, that information is published online for everybody to see. Your name, the name of the substance you took, of course, which sport you played, and some other information. And you can imagine that for those athletes, that's not really fun, right? Especially that the information will be published forever, as far as I know. And everybody can draw their own conclusions about you as a person, which may or may not be true. So they filed a complaint, essentially attacking in a legally manner whether or not this publication system is in line with the GDPR. I think what is really interesting is that the Advocate General, so the Advocate General is like the most important advisor to the court, says, well, yes, the system of publishing information online about athletes using doping, that can be done in line with the GDPR, but it has to be proportionate. And that means in practice that you have to assess case by case whether or not you should publish the name. And if you do it, let's say the person used doping in a football context, why should you put that information online for everybody to see if you would only need to inform football associations, right? So don't put it online for everybody to see, but for a smaller audience, data minimization. And it makes sense, but he doesn't, the Advocate General does not disregard it per se. He also said, well, if you publish that information, especially if you mention the substance, the doping used, that can qualify as health data. I thought that was interesting. Advocate General says also, if you put out that information, it could qualify as criminal convictions data, especially if the penalty involved, right? If you used doping, usually there's a penalty involved. In the worst case, you can get barred from the sport altogether. In such a case, you could consider such information as criminal convictions data. And I thought this was really interesting because there's another Advocate General opinion of this case, part 1, that said the other direction, no health data, no criminal conviction data. So you have two really smart people saying two very different things. So that was the NADA judgment. Still pending. Advocate General published the opinion. The judgment will follow probably in 3 or 4 months. And let me see which ones I want to discuss. Yeah, this one, the RRC Sports, another sports case. You guys should really do with sports. It's a new niche. I think your clients will love it. What happened here? You have the FIFA, the well-known football organization, and they have made this digital platform. The idea is that if you are a football player's manager or agent, all those, all those agents that sell and buy football players. It sounds a bit weird, but that's what they do. They have the obligation to adhere to the FIFA rules, and that means that they have to input data about their players in the FIFA platform. A few agents, at least 2 of them, were not happy with that. They also said, well, if we put in information about our clients, our football players on the platform, it's not only a GDPR problem, but also a competition problem, because the idea is that that information will be also sent to possible potential competitors of those agents. So we're not really happy about it. Anyways, one of the reasons was a GDPR. And here what I think is really interesting, and I have to check my notes, is that the Advocate General already delivered an opinion about it in May, so we can expect a judgment somewhere by the end of this year. And it dives into the notion of legitimate interest. And maybe if you are not from the Netherlands, in the Netherlands it's a huge deal. I already hear people laughing because our Dutch DPA, not Stefan, that was before his time, said that legitimate interest can only be interest if you can point at interest written in a law. But it's a bit strange because a lot of legitimate interests, you cannot find them in any law, such as commercial interests. Well, maybe you remember the KNLTB case, judgment about Lawn Tennis Association. Long story short, court says a commercial interest as such can be a legitimate interest. Well, not really surprising perhaps to you as a practitioner, but in the Netherlands this was a whole big deal. Then you would think, this is the end of the story. Well, maybe not, because the Advocate General dives into this notion of legitimate interest, because that's what the FIFA says. They say we have made this data platform, and the legal ground for it are our legitimate interests. And the Advocate General says a bit of a strange things about what can and cannot be a legitimate interest. First, it says, well, transparency is not a legitimate interest if you are a company. Transparency is an interest reserved for public administrations. So that's quite strange, at least to me. And he also says, well, it is about, let me see, the interest have to be, let me see. Oh yeah. So transparency should not be a legitimate interest. The data processing involved in legitimate interest should also be strictly necessary, and this is a wording that you also come across in previous case law. It's a bit strange because the words strictly necessary are not mentioned together in the GDPR in Article 6.1.f, but okay. And it says regarding the legitimate interest balancing test, that the data processing should not place an intolerable burden on the data subjects. personally, I've never heard from that notion. And he also doesn't offer a source. I'm not saying the Advocate General is wrong, because he's way more smarter than me, but I think it's just a bit strange, all these new notions, and I thought that we closed this chapter of what is not or can be a legitimate interest, but it seems that the Advocate General is opening up the discussion as part of the RRC sports case. And then, last but not least, because we are in Stockholm, I want to talk about Stockholm's lokaltrafik case. It's a good pronunciation, no? It's horrible. I predicted this case wrongly. I am the first to admit that. What I do sometimes, of course, it's a bit risky. If I read about a case, I put on LinkedIn, for example, my prediction how the case will pan out. What will the judge or the Advocate General say about it? And I'm curious how you guys see this case. So what happened, you have this public transport company, Stockholm's Trafik, and their inspectors walking around, issuing fines, for example, checking the tickets of the passengers. They wear body cams, body-worn cameras. Of course, if you film someone, you process personal data. The question is then, in that case, you wear a body cam, you film people, passengers, public transport. Is that a case of Article 13 GDPR or Article 14 GDPR? So 13 is about you obtain the personal data directly from that person, and 14 is every other situation where you do not obtain the information directly from the person. Maybe by a show of hands, and hopefully I feel less alone, who thinks this is an Article 13 situation? Okay. Yeah, and 14? I'm so glad, because I also thought 14. I don't feel alone anymore, but the Advocate General says no, it's 13. And to me, that's crazy, but if you read his arguments to substantiate it, it makes sense, I guess. I will tell you what my problem is with this whole ordeal. Mostly because of the practical implications. If you use Article 13 GDPR, the timing that you have to inform the data subject about what are you going to do with the data processing is directly when you are interacting with the person. So if you are a ticket inspector walking in the public transport, and you, hey, sir, madam, can I have your ticket? Oh, and by the way, this is our privacy policy. And then you have to blurb all your, to me, that seems crazy. And that's also what the public transport company says. For us, they said it's infeasible. We cannot oblige to this obligation in practice. So for us, 14 would be more convenient. Yes, we have a privacy policy, but we just put out a sign. If you want to learn more about how we use the body cameras, go to, I don't know, a certain website or something. And then maybe I'm just a practical person. That was the main reason why I thought, oh, we are heading towards Article 14. There are, of course, more reasons, but I'll leave it to this point for now. Again, if you read the opinion, it is quite a compelling case that indeed Article 13 applies, just because the GDPR says 14 is about every other situation except directly obtained by the data subject. And in this sense, you have to admit that it is directly obtained by the data subject because you are interacting one-on-one with a person. I think it's, for me, I predicted this wrong regarding the Advocate General's opinion, and hopefully the court will go to another direction, but you can imagine that I'm done predicting right now. I think we have to look at the time. How many time do we have left? Actually, the next one will start. Oh, the next one will start. What we can do, I don't know, are there a lot of questions right now? We can maybe address a few, and we can improvise if possible.
Yeah, I will come up for the digital audience has to see me.
Oh, very good. Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you.
Did you already get an applause from the people?
No?
Yeah.
Thank you. We have a couple of questions from the digital audience, and
Yeah.
then I have to apologize if you already mentioned it, because I am
Could be.
arranged and I have to run back and forth to. But then repetition is always good, maybe.
Exactly, exactly, yeah.
And one question that it has been a lot of talking, that is around Mr. or Monsieur, peut-être, Latombe.
Yes.
In that case. Yeah, so if you can comment a little bit, what's happening? People wonder, because there have been a couple of stories before.
I don't know Mr. Latombe personally. What I know is that he is a well-known French politician. I have the idea, and is Max Schrems already in the building? Because I had the feeling that he was competing with Max Schrems about who is the first dealing with this notion of the data privacy framework.
We will have Schrems later today, so
you
we
can ask him.
Yeah.
So,
but you don't know anything about the court case, or not?
I don't have additional information. No, sorry.
And another digital question was the UK the adequacy decision, if you know anything about that. If it should be, because it should be every year or something, they should try it, something like that, and people wonder what is happening.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm afraid you have the wrong person in front of you. So the UK adequacy, actually they have two adequacy decisions. So one regarding personal data and the other about, I always call it police data, but what I mean is personal data in the context of law enforcement.
Because they are changing their Data Act.
But then you know more than me. No, so I think really great questions, but I have to remain silent.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions then from the audience?
No.
No questions from the audience? Okay.
Okay.
Proceed.
Let's continue.
Very interesting.
Let's continue. Hey. I see someone using the monitor. Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, so this is the last part about the what they call the EU Digital Rulebook. I summarize it as all the technologic and the cyber and the data-related laws, and yeah, we have quite a few. I will show you in a minute. I will talk about the tech policy a little bit, then a general overview of those laws. I promised, or at least it was mentioned in the brochure, that I should talk about the NIS2 and the Cyber Resilience Act, so I will do that. If we have time, I will devote a moment to the AI Act, Data Act, and Digital Service Act. And also, yeah, we will end with an outlook of what's to come, because Brussels is not done with us. More laws are coming. Yeah, I think this is just as a reminder, why do we have all these laws and what is actually the policy idea behind it? I could find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different policies cementing all those digital laws. You have the digital decade, Europe Fit for the Digital Age, EU cybersecurity strategy, European data strategy, and on the top right you see the digital single market strategy. You can imagine that because of all these different policies, the laws not always really complement each other in a nice manner. There is nobody working in Brussels with a helicopter view, like a great director or puppeteer who makes sure everything connects like a jigsaw puzzle, unfortunately. So what I tried is to make sense of it all. There is a data set available. Actually, if you contact me, I can send it to you as well, where you can learn about these digital laws. And I try to identify them. And yeah, if you can see in the background, I inserted that famous Japanese painting of a tsunami, a big wave of laws coming our direction. And that's, yeah, it's not only something popular to say, but it's also true. If you look at the statistics, the number depicts digital laws published each year. Right now, only 11 this year, so hey, this is quiet, relatively. But yeah, there will be more in the future. Luckily, 2 were abandoned, the e-privacy regulation and the AI liability directive. I would say, actually, unfortunately, because having rules on a harmonized level about AI liability is very good for the internal market, but hey, who am I? E-privacy regulation, yeah, that was a whole story, different story altogether. And if you map all those data and technology related laws, you get this blurb, network graph, as they call it. The bigger the sphere, the more laws are referencing to it. And if we look at the law that has the most incoming references from other laws, not really surprising, it is the GDPR, and next to it, the EU GDPR. And as I said, yeah, I wrote a LinkedIn article about it. If you want, I can send you my data set and you can play around it yourself, with it yourself. This is how I try to categorize all these laws. Certainly, these are not all the laws that I regard as part of the EU Digital Rulebook, but you can see that one part of the laws are regulating AI systems, other open data or product data, data relating to products. You could categorize data-related laws in personal data and non-personal data, especially the latter, non-personal data, is becoming more and more important. And I also think for you as a data protection professional, simply because due to analysis, data analysis, and connection with other types of data, non-personal data can, how do you say, as a chameleon, change their colors and become personal data. Cybersecurity regulations, of course, I listed a few of them. Yeah, I promised to tell you about the NIS2 Network and Information Systems Directive. This is quite important law because it's for so-called essential and important entities. And there are quite a lot of them. If you are an entity in healthcare or a cloud provider or public administration, chances are high that your organization is captured by this regulation, or sorry, directive. And it means, because it's a directive, that it has to be transposed to your own national law. And that should have been done ultimately on the 17th of October 2024, so last year. The Netherlands is quite late with that, but still, you have to adhere to the rules. And I can tell you all about it. We can devote a whole conference about the NIS2 directive. For now, I would say that it cements all the best practices of cybersecurity, and I put a list of it, like cybersecurity measures regarding access control, incident report, cyber hygiene, encryption, testing, etc. All those things that if you work in the field of cybersecurity, you will know these things. But now they're really obligatory, mandatory, written in the law. So that's a good thing. People working on the C-level, the highest level of an organization, the law states, the NIS directive states, that those people are liable if their organization does not comply with these cybersecurity measures, obligations. And that's really fun. A friend of mine, he is like on a high level, and he was really grumpy. Joost, I have to go to cybersecurity training. It's so boring. Why do I have to? And if you just say, okay, if you don't do that, you can be directly liable for all the consequences you will have if you do not adhere to the rules. Then, oh, okay, I will go to the training. I think that's a really good way to keep our bosses moving in the right direction. Another law that's interesting is Cyber Resilience Act. That's connected to products, but also in certain cases to software, mobile apps, hardware with digital elements. I would like to invite you to study the definitions because the scope is quite sometimes difficult to understand. But if you read the press release of the European Commission, the idea was to regulate things like smart watches or baby monitors or household appliances, more or less the same things covered by the Data Act. We will talk about it in a minute. But software as a service, which is of course the most popular form of software right now, is not covered. This too, I think, it complements the NIS2 directive. if you're not covered by the NIS2 directive, but you work in industry, product-focused business, chances are high you are covered by this act. And you have certain obligations. You have to implement security updates on time. There's also a minimum maintenance period you have to apply. I think from it's 5 years. All these like common sense things related to products and their cybersecurity are now enacted in a law. And I think this is really good development. You still have time to comply with it because the law applies to products placed on the market, such as your smart toothbrush or smart meter or smart thermostat, on the 11th of December 2027. So there's quite some time. I will skip this procurement checklist due to the time. If you want to know what were my tips, just ask me. And now I'm thinking, what do I want to convey in the last minute? I'll skip the AI Act. I have the feeling you guys are quite well aware of the AI Act. And I also skip the Data Act, although it is really important. If you want to learn more, just contact me. I've written a peer-reviewed article about it. I think every data protection practitioner should learn about it. Again, this is about data in connection to products, and you have to send those data or make it available to the user of your product, which of course can raise all kinds of data protection related questions. It's a law not to be underestimated. These days we don't talk about privacy notices anymore. No, they are called Privacy and Data Act notice. And if you read my article, you will understand why. Because those worlds of non-personal data connected to products and personal data, they are converging in a certain sense. Digital Services Act, I will skip and I will use, do I have 1 minute? Yeah, thank you very much. Because actually I don't. They are too kind for me. What can we expect? A few of these things have been addressed by previous speakers today, so I was glad that they raised it. AI Act, of course, has been said. Some countries are not happy. Maybe you've heard the phrase "stop the clock." They want to stop certain application dates because, yeah, certain businesses need more time to adhere to the rules of the AI Act. Whether or not they are right, I'm not sure. I think a part of their criticism is valid, mostly because the standards, like the detailed standards about how to make a compliant AI system, they are not ready yet. So on the one hand, I understand the businesses that say, hey, we want to wait for those standards and then we know what to do, for example, to make a compliant high-risk AI system. GDPR in review, I think this is an ongoing discussion. Should we open up the GDPR 2.0? I think it was the head of the Swedish Data Protection Office this morning who voiced a little bit of, not criticism, but he warned us against these ideas, and I agree with it, because the GDPR, it is quite good. Regulation on procedural rules for GDPR enforcement, that's going on. That will be a regulation. I don't know when, but the idea is that on a European level, the supervisory authorities will cooperate more effectively. Digital Fairness Act addresses a lot of things, or has the potential to address a lot of topics, one of which are dark patterns and deceptive design. And maybe you've heard this also in a data protection context. Cloud and AI development is more about investing in these things. Oh yeah, and last but not least, the omnibus packages, whether or not we should revise cookie rules. And this ties into the GDPR review. I think you've heard all those arguments before. Cookie fatigue, oh, we hate the cookie banners, blah, 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 blah. I don't think the critique holds any merit. I think the e-privacy regulation is quite written, of course, in a day and age that the internet was not what it is now, but I don't think we should meddle with it too much. Last but not least, data space regulations. The idea is that a lot of sector data, agricultural data, healthcare data, legal data, energy data, mobility data, all these types of data, they get their own regulation comparable to what we already have seen, the European Health Data Space Regulation. So my good news to you is we have lots and lots of work in the coming years and years and years. Okay, Thank you very much.
I think everyone in the room has a little bit imposter syndrome after listening to you. Like you
Why
feel
so?
like I know nothing at the moment.
I
but
have the
know,
feeling I know
no,
nothing.
after you, we feel like more confident about our knowledge. This is what I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Joost.
Thank
This
you.
is a well-deserved
Oh, wow.
certificate.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Just to respond to the question you had about the UK adequacy, it's set to expire in December. I think this is why we got this question.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
to add on that, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And then, we
Yeah,
can.
a lot to take in for a non-lawyer,
Right.
I'll tell you that. We are moving on to the next item on the agenda, and it's a time to get a bit more hands-on with